Good evening and welcome to the final pilot episode of A Pretty Good Day, presented by Pockets Full of Soup. I'm your host, Jared Petty. Pretty Good Day is the storytelling show about the best days and moments of our lives. I'm speaking to you tonight from a gazebo. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning on a very frigid late December Indiana evening. I'm in a little town in northeast Indiana. A cold front is blowing in, and I'm wrapped up in warm clothes and sitting out here near a park bench in the middle of this sleepy little town because I can't really find any room in my parents' house to record without being interrupted. It's a really small place. I had hoped this month to present the first kind of full episode of A Pretty Good Day to you, but there's still a few kinks that I want to work out, mostly little things that were bothering me. And then there's also the matter of the fact that my mother and father, while good people, have a pretty terrible internet connection, and it's frankly interfering with upload speeds on some things I've been wanting to do. And I think it's best not to put the hands of this, or not hand over my new project and all hopes and dreams attached to it to the tenuous care of a not so marvelous DSL connection. So instead, we're going to do this final pilot, work out a couple more kinks. If you sent me stuff for A Pretty Good Day, don't worry, it's not forgotten and will be used in the initial first full episode. I'm going to try some things out with that I'm pretty excited about. We'll see how it works out. But in the meantime, one more little story about a good day from my life. I mentioned moments at the beginning of the show because sometimes I'm beginning to wonder if this program is as much about the best days of our lives as it is about this little moment you remember. One of the things about getting older, you discover your memory does start to have gaps you never realized were there. Pretty good days, you remember portions of them in vivid color. You can remember every smell, the feel of every surface, the skin against your face during a kiss. You can remember the sounds in the air and the thumping of your own heart, but other parts of those same days fade. At least for me, they become more like ghost stories. They become shadows that you have to kind of fill in the corners from clues, and when you can't find the clues, from the speculation of your own informed deduction, and if you can't handle that, then your own imagination. Tonight, here in this far-off prairie, way from my current home in California, the stars are shining brightly. There is very little in the world more beautiful than stars on a truly cold, crisp, cloudless winter evening like the one we have tonight. And above me, they are blazing. It has been a very long time since I could properly see the stars the way I can tonight, and I think that was some of the inspiration for the little story I've decided to tell. Above me right now, Orion the Hunter, the constellation, is shining in all its celestial glory. Orion has been important to me since I was a little boy. I first noticed those 3 stars in the sky before I consciously understood that they were part of a constellation. I'd seen constellations in books, but as far as I can recall, I was drawn to those near perfect parallel dots in the sky that form a line. That, of course, is the belt of the great hunter. Also, as a kid, I had an interest from very early on in Greek mythology, and sooner or later, I put all those things together and learned the story of Orion the Hunter and his place in the heavens above us. That interest was compounded and fed by visits to my local planetarium in Washington, D.C., where I grew up. Our school took us to the planetarium every year, where enthusiastic scientists would light the sky above our heads and fill it with simulated star fields and show us the lines of the constellations and tell us how far away each of these marvelous flaming bodies in the heavens were from our planet. How many light years, how many decades and centuries it would take to travel them at the most unimaginable, impossible of speeds. I remember being captivated by the majesty and the wonder, the science of it all, and also the mystical portion of it. The marvel of perhaps an inkling into a mote of the heavenly mind of God. All of it together in my mind as a child. And we went to that planetarium to look because, frankly, when you lived in D.C., you didn't see the stars all that well. Washington, D.C. was not an especially polluted city, but a haze hung over it, and when you didn't have the atmospheric haze caused by exhaust fumes or whatnot, you had the low-hanging clouds there off the Potomac Basin, and you had the reflection of the city lights on the atmosphere above, creating a kind of a permanent orange or amber hue over the whole city. I remember as a child I thought of it as an orange peel sky, a sort of dome of orange light that umbrellaed my whole world in the evenings. I liked it. It was a friendly sky to me. To this day, I still feel good when I'm under artificial amber lighting. There's actually some shining up from the top of the hill where I'm sitting right now, and I find the sensation comforting. I remember I wrote a poem in college about an orange peel sky that came from that experience, but I digress, as I often do. So these planetariums, they taught me about Orion the Hunter. When I see Orion over my head, when he rises up bright and strong in the winter, I always feel like he's portending change and good things. And when he begins to set in the spring, as he goes under the horizon and his rival, Scorpio, ascends to the heavens, replacing him in the pageantry of the night sky, I always feel like some great change is taking place. I realize that's silly, of course, a fragment, an echo of a childhood imagination that was so overactive that it was willing to contemplate real-life dragons and spirits in the stars and invisible celestial mysteries that they just seem out of place in the drudgery of adulthood, in the tasks and the work weeks and all the demands of being a grown-up. But they made so much sense then. They seem so real. I think so much of what we come to understand is important to us, what magic there is in the world, exists in those spaces where we're willing to look a little past what we have to be toward what we ought to be, what we could be, what we should be. And I think where imagination and possibility meet, that's where most of the real magic in the world probably still exists. All that to say, I felt a warmth toward the night sky and toward Orion and Scorpio and the constellations in the heavens. When I was in elementary school in Washington, D.C., I was afforded many privileges and opportunities that students in other areas of the country may not have access to. We went on extensive field trips. Our Arlington County school system was apparently fairly well funded, and we were able to avail ourselves to the wide variety of museums, cultural institutions, festivals, storytellers, musicians that were available in the D.C. metro area and Northern Virginia. We took trips to Air and Space and to art galleries and to the American History Museum and the Smithsonian Institution of Natural History, and many, many other places besides, the Jefferson and the Lincoln Memorials and the Washington Monument, all the rest. Off seeing great things, memories of great days. And we were also afforded the marvelous privilege of the ultimate elementary school field trip extravaganza, the overnighter. Now, I don't know how that got put together. I guess it was just something that for the upper grades they let you do. I believe I was in the third grade when we did this. So third grade, that's what, about 8 years old. I know I was old enough to have my reading mania in full swing, and likewise my fascination with the burgeoning, exploding world of video games. That I was still catching A-Team reruns and Knight Rider in the evening. I was the right age for being impressionable and probably for being exploited by marketers as I lusted over the toys of the era. But I digress. It was also a time for wonder and a chance to enjoy the exciting prospect of getting to spend 2 whole days at school that weren't at school at all. Instead, pajamas and overnight bag packed with a group of teachers and a few parental volunteers and a couple of, I guess we'd call them rangers, professional foresters. We traveled to a nature center in Northern Virginia that seemed far outside Washington, D.C. And there we bivouacked in the basement of a nature museum building, laying out sleeping bags and pillows and spending an entire day and night and next morning out there in the woods, exploring the wonders of the natural world. Now, let me tell you what, that was exciting in several ways. First, I really was, at that point, a city kid. When I traveled up to my in-laws, my parents, in-laws, got that wrong, my mother's parents in Ohio during the summer months, and I spent plenty of time outdoors there, and I played in the park near my house that had deep woods around it, rode my bike, but this was different. When our bus pulled into this place, we were surrounded by trees. It was like driving through Fangorn Forest. It was the Entwood. It was Greenwood the Great. It was rolling hills and dirt roads and unpaved paths over gnarled, knotted trees down rocky ridges. It was the kind of place that kids could break their leg, and boy, were we excited about it. I can't imagine how anxious our teachers were. Somehow, we all managed to avoid serious injury in a day that involved opening up our bag lunches after a long bus ride and eating out on a lawn, looking out over a forest green, munching on cheese sandwiches and swapping grapes for yogurt and yogurt for applesauce and applesauce for canned peaches and canned peaches for fruit roll-ups and all the rest of the barter that went into a typical third grade midday meal. I was there with my friends. I was a happy kid at this point. Most of my life around that time was very pleasant. Sad things were happening all around me in my family, but my parents were very good at shielding me from them. And so I was able, thanks to their generosity and to their selflessness, to be able to enjoy the benefits of perhaps a fantastical degree of serenity, imagination, and happiness. I was a good student. I was a well-behaved kid. And they protected me from a lot of what was going on all around me that I wasn't aware of at all until many years later. And out there in those woods that day with my friends, and I had a lot of friends there, I was happy. We did silly, wonderful educational things. We met snakes that the rangers brought out and had wrapped around their arms, and we learned about different kinds of trees and leaves, and we looked at bristly pines, and we looked at shady oaks, and we threw acorns at each other and did other disruptive things. We made a food web. Yeah, I remember those. It was like a food chain, except it was a web made of just dozens of feet of red yarn. At least it seemed like dozens of feet as a kid. Who knows? We stretched it from kid to kid, each one of us a different part of the food chain. I was working very hard to angle my way to becoming the hawk so that I could sit at the top of that local food chain, the red-tailed hawk, the apex predator, the hungry carnivore devouring everything beneath me. But I'm reasonably sure I ended up a worm and got eaten pretty quick. We made that web of life there out of the yarn around, and did our best to entangle ourselves in it Spider-Man style. And really, I mean, childhood's not idyllic, not by a long shot. Real childhood is rough and hard. Kids are mean, and even the happiest children have to deal with bullies and harshness and the realities of coming home to crying parents and fighting brothers and sisters, and often far, far worse. And at school, there's always the threat of violence and intimidation and very cruel teasing, as Steinbeck observed, the tremendous cruelty of young people, even very early on. But on this day, for me, there's nothing but pleasant memories of sunshine and wind through the trees. Oh man, that sound of wind through heavy trees. If you've never heard it before, if you've never lived in a place where trees tower 100 feet above you and a wind blows up and the whole wood sings with the sound of moving leaves in the spring, there's nothing better in all the world. This was the springtime. The day went on. I got so excited. Instead of going home, it was time for dinner. We went down and we had a dinner there at the nature center. Talked with our friends. We talked about all the things that we talked about normally. We talked about the newest video games, and we talked about what was on television, and we talked about the movies we watched, and we talked about which superhero could beat which superhero, and just on and on and on, and it was utterly wonderful. Eventually, they had to give us the option to change into our pajamas and start to get ready for bed. If I remember correctly, at that point, I had a pretty awesome set of Transformers pajamas that I was excited about wearing because they glowed in the dark. Yeah, glow-in-the-dark pajamas are awesome. I was probably a little old for that, but are you ever really too old for things that glow in the dark? Anyway, but before changing, a couple of the rangers, a couple of teachers came down and gave those of us who wanted to go an option. They said that those who wished could grab their flashlight, we'd all brought our flashlights, and go on a night walk, a night hike, they called it. Well, I'd never ever really been on a hike before, much less a night hike. And the thought of going out into those dark, lightless woods with nothing but a flashlight and a group of friends was exciting. Who knows what might be out there? They'd already told us that in the area they had spotted coyotes and even if I remember right, wolves in the past. And one time bears had lived there, and there were deer, and who knows what you'd see. So of course my hand shot up, and a few minutes later bundled up against the cold of the early spring. I was on my way out with a small group of kids. Immediately, we took to shining the flashlights into each other's eyes, and immediately our teachers threatened us with severe repercussions up to and including banishment from the planet Earth if we continued doing that. And so reluctantly, we lowered our flashlights to the ground. And we kind of had to, because there were stumps and rocks everywhere, and we were headed out into the dark. Now, at that time, my friends, I had never really experienced the dark before, perhaps in my entire life. A lot of us, I think, go months or years of our existence at a time without experiencing real darkness. Some of us might go our entire adult existences, because the real dark is a rare and strange thing in this modern world of controlled electrons, where we've wired everything together and found a way to shine an artificial day into any place we wanted. Even here in this cold park in the middle of the night, there are lights all around me despite that clear night sky. I can probably count 20 of them within view. But once long ago, when people in ancient books wrote about darkness, they were talking about real dark. People in places like the ancient Near East, they might have worked in their fields during the day outside the village, but at night they came in to that tiny little cluster of huts, and they lit their tiny olive oil lamps, and they huddled together behind thin walls and prayed that whatever lurked out there in the darkness did not come to find them, because beyond the tiny glow, the fingertip candlelight that emerged from those old oil lamps, there was darkness. If you were lucky, the moon was out. and everything would be bathed in a pale whiteness that would allow you to see where you were going and step carefully and maybe see a thread off. But if it were a moonless and overcast evening, the darkness was pure and real and endless. The kind of darkness where you flap your hand in front of your face and you see nothing even right in front of your own eyes. And a few times in my life I have been outdoors in that kind of dark. And this night was very much like that under that canopy of trees, or at least it seemed to me. No light to be seen except far off behind the single glowing lamp outside the nature building, and then gradually that faded away, and only our little flashlights. The ranger had us turn them all off together, and under those trees we experienced the first true dark of my conscious and remembering life. And let me tell you what, it was a few seconds, I imagine, but it felt like a few hours. It was a hotbed of fantasies for me. It was an emergence of horror, terror, thrill, and wonderful possibilities. What could be out there? Wild beasts, monsters, dragons, ghosts, invisible stalking creatures, madmen escaped from prisons. Who knew? And then lights came back on, and of course it was just woods, and off we went. The sound of leaves brushing under our feet. And then we stepped out, after a few minutes, into a field, into a wide glade, a sort of a huge circle of tall grass in the midst of tall trees, with an open sky above. And that's when I beheld the thing that I have never seen the like of before or since. I don't think we had to be told to turn off our flashlights, because what we saw was so riveting and extraordinary that no one, no human being, no creature with a heart and a spirit could be untouched. What we saw before us was the clearest sky, unmarred by any light reflecting off any city, unmarred by a single cloud or shred of mist, a sky so purely black that it would have seemed infinite were it not for the sea of stars. And when I say a sea, I don't mean a thick pattern in the sky. I don't mean a Hollywood sky. I don't even mean the most beautiful painting you've ever seen, or the most delightful rendering of some pure western starscape above. What I saw was the Milky Way galaxy, somehow impossibly skewed onto its side at some madcap angle, so that we could see all the heavens above us. It seemed like millions of stars, stars so thick that if you'd reached up, you could have grabbed hold of their soft coldness and pulled yourself into them and swum through them. Swim through the heavens. So thick and bright with light, so utterly unlike day, and yet so extraordinarily present that it was thunderous to the mind and riveting to the heart, even of a child, especially of a child. Indeed, that wonder first, and the raw impressionist beauty of it all, like some Van Gogh brought to life, but then more so, hearing the words of my father. My father, a rare and wonderful creature, a man of faith and of science, who had carefully taught me that all the stars in the sky were old, impossibly old, old some into perhaps the millions of years or beyond, old beyond the reckoning of people, old beyond imagination, and that the light from those stars, despite its incredible speed, was still finite, and it took so long to get here, so long to reach the place where I was standing, that some of those stars might not even exist anymore. They certainly weren't in the place that I was seeing them, that what I was seeing was an echo. What I was seeing when I looked in the night sky, my father taught me, was the past. When I looked up at the stars, every night my father told me I was looking back in time, and today, that evening, I looked back in time on all the universe. I saw a great heavenly mystery opened up before me. But even that was not all. Because not only the sky glowed with impossible light, but also the field. There is a phenomenon in nature known as bioluminescence. I'm sure you're probably familiar with it. Some creatures producing their own light. And among the creatures that do this, something called Foxfire. Foxfire grows in the fields of Western Virginia, West Virginia, the Appalachians. It glows with a pale and beautiful limpid light somewhere between white and green. And that field that night was full of foxfire, something that up to that point I'd never beheld in my life. And so just as the sky shone down, the field shone up with a thick mirroring. It was as if the grass were water, perfectly still, reflecting the perfect sky, but instead it was producing its own glowing light before us. And somewhere between an impossibly bright heaven and an impossibly bright earth, it all met, and I was standing there, a child with a group of other awed children, frozen and stunned, all of us captivated by beauty unexpected. Of a scale and caliber that my words today fail to give merit to. Well, that's what happened. Again, more a moment than a story, I suppose. I walked away after a few minutes, though I didn't want to, because you're a kid. When they tell you it's time to go, you have to go. Had it been for me, I think I'd have laid down in that foxfire and laid under that sky as long as I could until the sun came up, and then I think I'd have prayed that the sun not burn away the beauty of it all. Since that time, I've taken to the outdoors, camping, hiking. Something I still enjoy is spending time outside, even though it's harder for me to do than it used to be. And in a lifetime, 30 years since, of seeking for something like that moment, I've never found its equal again. I never found that sky. Found traces of it. I've seen the strands of the Milky Way, and I've seen Foxfire again, and I've seen real pools of water reflecting impossible, brilliant, beautiful moons, oceans creating bridges of light across wide waters. I've seen glowworms in the deep places of the earth. I've seen the shine and splendor of the sun on snow and high mountains. But I've never seen the like of what I saw that day. I think sometimes people have asked me, and this isn't a sermon, don't worry, but sometimes people ask me about my faith, whatever it is, and why I believe some of the things I do about the universe having a mystical nature. In the wonder of that very explicable moment, I saw something that, while absolutely quantifiable, I've never been able to qualify. I saw something splendorous, something powerful and beautiful beyond reason that changed me. I do believe I've been searching for that night every day of my life since. I've been reaching my hand out for that splendor, and while I haven't beheld another beautiful night with my eyes like that, I've beheld moments every bit as marvelous and shocking and unexpected and wonderful and transformative and magical. Every now and then that's happened. So I'd say that was a pretty good day. Thank you very much for listening again. Your support, your subscriptions, your patronage allow me to continue turning these little talks into a part of my life that's become precious in so many ways and frankly helpful in so many. Thank you for listening and being a part of it. It means a lot to me. I hope you'll share your stories with me. You can do that through the email at mail@pocketsfullofsoup.com. That's mail@pocketsfullofsoup.com. You can always reach out to me on Twitter and say hi. I try to reply. And if I miss you, forgive me and just hit me up again. It is my hope and my prayer that the light of the heavens and the light of the earth will meet many places in your life from this day forward. And that you will touch on the wonders of so many marvelous things. And that you will revel in the joy of nature, and the wonder of science, and the tremendous power of discovery every day. And that as much as possible, you'll be able to share that joy and all that it teaches and all that it brings with those in your life. See you next month. Bye-bye.